Stay with us.
Life in Kajuru local government area is usually a bubbly one, with residents making the most of what life offers to make themselves happy. But now, that joy has been rudely cut short by bandits who stormed the community in the early hours of Sunday, July the 11th, 2021. The morning is here, but what it reveals are long faces worn by residents who cannot believe what has befallen them. The people throng the palace of the Emir of Kajuru to be sure the story is not true. But sadly, it is. The throne is empty, which heightens their fears. After a thorough search of the palace and environs, it is discovered that the monarch, along with 13 members of his family, have been abducted. Security agencies have been heavily criticized by the Emirates Council for what its spokesperson describes as slow response, and is glad that the attack did not degenerate into a massacre.
No any repel, no any counter-attack, no presence of any security personnel. We are left to our own peril, and this is exactly what happened. Our only appreciation and thankfulness to His Almighty Allah is that no life was lost. If not, the way they converge on this town, I will swear that there should have been more than 200 catastrophic deaths in this town.
Even if the police were to go in pursuit of the bandits, the task, as this resident puts it, will be extremely difficult, as high mountains and thick forests surround the community, which makes it a safe haven for bandits. He, however, makes some suggestions.
Government need to equip them with a new gadget, that all these places they will try to how to be monitoring with all those gadgets in order to have access.
Kidnapping has become a fastest growing lucrative business in the country, exposing the need for urgent steps by authorities to put a stop to this crime crippling the society.
And that's what we start with this morning, just what you saw there, the kidnap of the 85-year-old Emir of Kajuru and his relatives, 13 others abducted alongside himself. And the big questions to be asked, you've heard the words of the community members right there. They're still, wondering how that was possible, but they also still say that if things hadn't gone how they would have gone or how they went, that over 200 people might have been massacred. But just to shed light on why it would seem that no response, no fight back was given on the part of the security agencies. And we have with us this morning Mr. Wilson Inaligo, who is a former Assistant Inspector General of Police. You're welcome to Abuja Studios.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
Well, it is very worrisome. I don't know how you reacted when you saw the news that an emir had been kidnapped.
Well, we have to recognize the fact that we are facing monumental security challenges, which keeps evolving, overlapping. And so when you have such incidents, such situation, you really cannot rule out certain things. These things happen, and try to erode the bank deposit of security agencies. But that is not to say that the security agencies are not doing enough. But I think there need to be more communication. Let the narrative also come from the part of security agencies, particularly the police, giving a clearer picture of what's happened, because we've heard from the community leaders. And we also need to, the police need to communicate with the public. I mean, try to tell what really happened and what their response has been. But I know that Kajuru has been on the spotlight for this kind of crisis. So I know there will be security agencies around the place. But what this calls for, I think it calls for the government and the security agencies really coming together and adopt a holistic approach. Not just preventing an emir from being kidnapped, but finding solution to what is generally happening, particularly in the northwest. Katsina, Zamfara, part of Kebbi, Niger states. I think the security agencies and the government need to come up with a different approach, just like the president ordered. They need to come with adopt different strategy. And what am I trying to say? It has reached a point that you're not going to be protecting one school, the other school, because the personnel, you will spread them thin. And when you spread them thin, these people pick and choose the target to attack. Therefore, what I think should be done at this stage to prevent these occurrences from repeating and developing from one to the other, what I think we need to do at this stage, the security agencies and government, first of all, there has to be that demonstrable will to tackle it headlong. And what am I trying to say? We now need to gather comprehensive intelligence and information and improve our response capability. What do I mean by that? First of all, what intelligence do we have? How come these people take us unawares? How are we able, how many cells are there in these areas?
It's a big question to
Yes.
ask.
So
when you look at how many attacks we've seen on Kaduna alone in the last 2 weeks or so.
So there seems to be some intensity, yes. But then we begin to identify in the so-called forests how many cells operate, who are the leaders of this gang. And then you can use 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or 5, 6 weeks, and gather adequate intelligence. Why other operations are going on, but gather adequate intelligence. Now, once in the process of gathering this intelligence, what response capability do we have? How do we improve on it? How do we get these guys out of that place? How do we stop these attacks?
You don't think that these questions ought to have been asked from the very first attacks that we saw, I mean, especially with kidnappings in Kaduna? We've seen quite a number. On Friday, there was some relief or some reprieve. You know, some students were released of the Nuhu Bamali College. That's all we've seen so far in terms of people being released. But the Baptist students are still there, you know, asking that, you know, that they be released as well. And now we're seeing that of Kajuru. Looking around Kajuru, though, there'll be huge questions, because it will seem that naturally the place has some protective, you know, has been protected by nature. We have hills and some mountains surrounding the area. I don't want to say the city, like the town, but you know, that did not seem to have protected them at all from these attacks. In fact, they even see it as a problem, because they think that those who seek to attack the towns are hiding in those hills. Is there anything that could have been done, predicted perhaps, and, you know, done in anticipation of such an attack? Or was it just too far-fetched for security agents and maybe people who live in the town to have thought of?
Yeah. Yes, you may live in a place and you think you are protected by hills and mountains and other features. But the point I'm trying to say is getting the facts right, and that is about intelligence. Now, where is it possible to breach? Because these people are mingling in the community. Because from what I read, the emir had a security meeting in his palace, and then they discussed certain issues. But what I'm trying to say, you could prevent or rescue all this, but it does not prevent them from happening. Therefore, you've got to have a comprehensive approach, bringing the police and armed forces and the DSS coming together and says, look, let's identify officers who have served long in these areas, officers, and then some indigenous members of the community who have fair knowledge of the area. Some arrested bandits and kidnappers in those areas. Now, when you are able to build that pool, gather that fact, you now begin to think, how do we go about this? Because the question now is the how. How do we go about it? Surrounded by a mountain, according to the narrative by the community leader, he is saying that there was no response. But even if you had 10 officers or 20 police officers and all that there, but what we need to do, what I'm trying to say is that the security agencies, there must be the willpower by the government and the security agencies. First of all, gather intelligence, ensure synergy. There should be a comprehensive approach. That is from from Katsina, Zamfara, Kebbi, Niger. Identify the cells of these bandits in these areas. And then the Air Force, the Army, the police, the DSS, and other relevant security agencies to come up with an approach that will completely either eliminate or reduce to the barest minimum, disorganize them. That means you are having attack from the air, you are having the police and the army moving in, but the government must ensure that there is synergy. They should enforce that for an operation like this, the police and the military should come together and deal with it. But prior to this, you must get the facts right. You must get your intelligence right. And then you begin to see what are those things, because you now begin to also think of technology, which is a force multiplier. Technology will make up for inadequate number. So when you have adequate technology, there are cameras, there are long-range cameras, there are battery-operated CCTV that you can plant in some of these places that will monitor, but not taking it away from the community. So you have the community, the elected officials, and the security agencies all working together to gather intelligence. And I think, you see, one of the things you need to do, you have to begin to ask, we've had this kind of situation around the country. What lessons do we take from our peers in those places?
I was just about to ask you whether you're seeing any sense of urgency in terms of, the kind of attacks that we've seen in recent times. Have we seen on the part of our security agencies, on the part of government, that people are afraid? That is very true. And some have been asking as a result of this, that citizens be allowed to defend themselves, be allowed to carry arms to protect themselves if government is failing to do so. On the part of government and security agencies, are you seeing a sense of urgency to address these issues that are affecting are becoming an existential threat to communities? I mean, when the emir of a local government of a city is taken away, there'll be huge questions asked as to what are the people left to do? Yeah,
I think that's what I've been trying to make.
Yes, I mean, I want you to address the sense of, because you've been talking about what we need to do, I want to believe that these conversations are happening among security agents as well. I mean, in the places where these conversations matter, one would want to believe that these conversations should be taking place as well. The question is the sense of urgency in implementing whatever it is that has been thought through or has been thought out. Are we seeing it come to play? Or that they implemented something, it didn't quite work. That's why these people were successful. Other than, these people came in and they went in, you know, easily, did their operations and they left. That was it, not a whimper. That's even from the security agencies.
Yeah, there needs to be an adaptive approach. That means it can't be business as usual. The threat is real, continues to cause embarrassment to everybody. Therefore, what they need to do, of course, more aggression. They should be more aggressive, more proactive.
You're not saying that aggression, are you?
Well, I think there are deployments in those places, but I cannot. Let me tell you one thing. We have a huge area. That is why I have been hammering on intelligence. Come to think of it, you have massed your troops here. You put a critical mass in this local government, in that local government, and the guys have studied your pattern, and they choose where you think will not happen. This is one of the first times that a high-profile emir like this has been kidnapped. And so it lessens every day for the security agencies. But what it does require is you can no longer wait to be on the reactive side. You've got to be proactive. You've got to storm those forests, those mountains, and you've got to do them aggressively to create assurance in the mind of the people. If you are not doing that, but even if you do that, what I want to say, I think there is no adequate communication. The police PRO for
between who and who? Communication
between the security agencies to the public. That we've had, like I told you, we've had a narration of the community rep. Now, what did the police do? How did they go about it? We have not heard. I don't know if your reporter or anybody has interviewed the police. That is what I mean by communication. What I think needs to be done is, yes, we had an attack in Kajuru. Emir has been kidnapped. This is what we are doing. This is the number of... We had adequate deployment on ground. They tried to repel the attack. It didn't succeed. And we have launched a manhunt we've gone ahead, tried to adopt, we have deployed to rescue the emir.
What if that was a lie? I mean, they tried to repel the attack. You heard
Kajuru has deployment.
But you heard the people in that particular city. Yeah. I mean, they said you heard them. Yeah. These are not my words.
Yeah, I agree with you, but let me say something. I'm saying that I am encouraging the police and other security agencies to come forward. Let them own the narrative, because the narrative is just coming from one side and it's difficult for us. But I know that in Kajuru, where we have had a lot of killings, it will be impossible not to have deployment at Kajuru. It will be impossible. But whether it was effective or not, that is the situation that we face. But the point that I want you to note, and security agencies to note, is that they should no longer wait. All the deployments there, more personnel should be drawn from other places in this region, not just Kajuru, not just Zamfara, not just Katsina, but Niger State and all the surrounding places, that people are living in fear. People are afraid of going to their farms. The security agencies have to deploy adequately. But the point is, we need to hear from the government side, the security agencies, asked about the situation, because the narrative is only coming from the community as at now.
Well, let's speak to my colleagues in Lagos. I'm sure they have questions for you, gentlemen.
Well, yeah, but Mr. Nalogo, you know, people listening there's several who just can't understand or make sense of all of this, because how many days, or is it weeks ago, how the DSS operation was seen in Ibadan there. We've seen the authorities respond to certain things in certain ways. They own the narrative in those cases. So how come that these will happen with such huge amount of bandits enter a location, heavily armed, take their time, kidnap people, go away, and now here we are urging the police to own the narrative. Isn't it, from the look of things, that there's a lot more that is going on that they are willing to even let the people know?
You've got to look at the geography of these two terrain. The Northwest is a vast area. And so when you put in security personnel there, and I know a lot of arrests have been made, but I don't believe, and I think I hope I'm right, that the security agencies will deliberately leave one part and go to the other side. I think that is not the situation. But the situation that we have is where we have these multiple attacks that keeps overlapping, that keeps evolving. So, and a lot of assets, both human and material resources, are deployed in the Northwest, and they are trying to stop these attacks. But it is not to say that the number of personnel that went to Ibadan, I mean, at most it can't be more than 20 or 30. But in this case, we require a...
Is that to say, because, I mean, you have lots of people who will be of the impression that if there are protesters who wear T-shirts and protest in that same area, security agencies will show up. So these are the kind of things that residents, citizens see, and then it keeps chipping away at the trust that they're supposed to have with security agencies, because how come all these things happen and you're still urging them to own the narrative? Don't they know that they need to do that to restore confidence?
If you know the amount, I am no longer in service, but I know for a fact that there is massive deployment to the bushes and forests in the Northwest. I was a DPO in Shiroro, where you had a lot of attacks. And I know that even the military are deployed in those areas. And I can mention the names of those places. The military are deployed in Rafi. The police are also deployed there. But they need to be given more resources. They need to be more encouraged. There need to be an enforcement of synergy among security agencies, so that when this kind of attacks can be prevented. I think at this stage, there need to be a kind of task force considered to work for just 3 months to deal with issues and end this banditry and kidnapping in the Northwest. But I am aware that there are deployments in those places, and they are massive. But these areas are big. If you have been to Shiroro, from the dam, and you are going from there to Kagara, and all these places through Erenando, it's a huge area, a vast area. And then you take it again from Birningwari, and you are going towards there, going towards Zamfara. It's a huge area. So I want you to understand that the location, the geography, the topography of these places are not the same. So there are deployments, and I'm sure you have heard of even the Air Force operating in Birningwari. I think they even have a base there. So there are deployments. Unfortunately, they may not be as effective as we would like them to be, but it is not correct that there are no deployments. There are deployments, and a lot of operations are going on, and some kidnappers have been taken out.
Okay, could you tell us then?
But if that is not working enough, you've got to adapt. You've got to change. If your cheese get moved, then you change. There has to be new approaches. And
yes,
I think that's what the president was trying to say. That
those are part of the issues.
A change in policy and strategy.
And sometimes, one wonders, do they even have to wait for the president to tell them to adopt new approaches before they even do that? Okay, perhaps you could tell us, since you still have at least your colleagues in the force, Have you seen any deployment, any indication, anything whatsoever to let people know that steps are being taken to ensure that those quote-unquote ungoverned spaces are governed?
I know that some mobile police units have been sent to Kaduna, which we call visiting units, from other parts of the country that are not expressing the same level of crisis. They have been used to support operations ongoing in the Northwest. But those are details I will not know. But what I can say for a fact that is being done. But there has to be new thinking. There has to be they have to evolve a new strategy to create more assurance. You know, when we had when the crisis in the Northeast was at its peak, we used to have this joint press briefing by the armed forces and the police. And I think that needs to be brought back so that people can be informed timely. Now we are depending on social media, which is not always very correct to give us. So, and you shouldn't allow somebody sees the initiative to begin to communicate, and you could have misinformation because, and my appeal therefore is to the security agencies is you may not wait 2-3 hours for all the facts to gather in. The one you have, release it out so that you can dispel any misinformation that may have been carried on the social media or other media forum. And then you have to give a kind of list to the commissioner of police or even the area commander to talk on certain issues. And you have to give him that psychological support that even if you make mistake, it shouldn't be just punished if it is an honest mistake. People should be given that a little bit of free rein to operate so that the public can be informed. Because if you don't inform the community, you don't inform the elected officials, even the personnel serving in the force and other security agencies, they need to be aware of what is happening timely from official sources. If that is occurring, I'm sure what we are saying this morning might be different. Because if you are waiting to all you get the facts right, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, and already people are tweeting, Facebook is carrying, and all that. So I think we have to, the security agencies should bring back that joint briefing by the military and the police and other security agencies. It was a very good initiative. I don't know why it is not occurring again, but I think that should happen so that timely people can be informed. Yes, this happened in Kajuru. This is what we are doing. This is what really happened. We had officers. We've got to. So there has to be an effective media strategy, communication strategy.
I think that's quite important.
We should also evolve, adapt. We should adapt.
Pardon me. I mean, it's quite important because I recall parents of these abducted students saying time and again that they've not heard anything, trying to seek audience with government and security agencies. That's quite important. But we need to go to break right now. When we return, I mean, we've seen this simulation conducted in the nation's capital, Abuja, as to how security agencies and emergency responders should respond to things like this. We saw equipment, we saw men, women that were well kitted. And the question is, why isn't that happening in these areas where we've seen kidnappings and bandit attacks? We'll take this and more after this break. Just stay with us. A former AIG of police, Mr. Wilson Inalego, is here with us on the program this morning, joining us from our Abuja studio. I mean, kidnapping, bandit attacks are not new. Just saw in that report 7 years ago, a kidnapping occurred. We've seen that series of time. In fact, in Kajuru in 2019, you may have seen that kidnapping and killing in Kajuru Castle. It was meant to be a tourist site, and there were killings and kidnapping at that place 2 years ago. So it's not new. These ungoverned spaces are not new to us as well. They didn't just creep up on us and we suddenly realize, oh, wait a minute, we have vast landmass, vast ungoverned spaces. These are things that have been there way before now. And I referenced that simulation we saw in the nation's capital last week, where you saw men from, the armed forces, security agencies, emergency responders, responding to simulations of, terrorist attacks, such as this one, ideally. So the question is, why can't we see such in areas like Kajuru, Chikun, and the rest? Doesn't that say something about the value we place on people in those areas?
This attack happened in the early hours, I think about 2 a.m. or thereabouts. You are going to have a response. And it is only the personnel that are deployed in that community, either the police station or the post, and some rapid response teams that will react. But subsequently, the more organized ones will go there. It does happen in all operations, especially where you have several operations going on at the same time. So I know that, I'm told from Kaduna to Kajuru takes quite some distance. And when this thing happened, certainly the Operation Zanda or whatever, the operation, I don't know the name very well, will respond. But the question is it adequate? Now, how do we make this response adequate? How do we equip our responders to be more robust in their response? And I think that's what the conversation I'm trying to, have here. That how do we improve on our response capability? When information is passed to us, how do we use it? When we receive distress calls, how do we respond to them? Now, if you are leaving Abuja or Kaduna for Kajuru, it's going to take quite some time. And when they say about 200 bandits on 200 bike and all that, it was around 2 a.m. I'm surprised somebody counted, but that is not to downplay the number. Certainly the number was huge. But the point I want you to understand is that when you are conducting this type of operation, where you have several battlefields, and this is a war that is not organized, it's a guerrilla warfare, I think what they call asymmetric warfare. The enemy looks at you, see where you are vulnerable, and hit you, and make you look foolish.
I recall that you referenced that there are formations in that area earlier on during the conversation. You've referenced that there's at least some security. Going on. Just a moment, please. You referenced that at least there's security presence in that area. And, I mean, we know the modus operandi of the bandits. You've referenced it. They move in groups, 200. And this is not just, from this area. We've heard it across different areas. The fact that they come en masse on motorcycles and the rest and carry out the attack. So, you said it took place at midnight. These people experienced this, so at least they're in a better position to say what they experienced. And it goes back to my question earlier, the kind of value we place on these people. Shouldn't that be where we deploy our arsenal? We see these equipment used in city centers. You referenced that raid on the Banner home of Sunday Igboho. We've seen these equipment used, this intelligence deployed. So can't we also deploy it to that area? The question is, what value do we place on human lives there?
What I think, let me answer you this way. What I think the way out is, we have to create kidnap awareness in some of these communities so that potential areas of attack for kidnap, schools, and other institutions that are prone to attacks, we have to create kidnap awareness. And then in creating this kidnap awareness, we have to design and develop an early warning system. Just like in those days when we used to have several attacks on banks, they get connected to police stations. And as soon as they observe an attack, they press a panic button and alert the relevant security agencies. So So like I said, is that the point I'm trying to make is that deployments are in these areas, but it's not such that you can put them in one place. You've got to make them highly mobile. You've got to place them in some places, and the way to overcome this kind of the picture that is trying to be painted as if there is a neglect of one part or the other is to make some areas kidnap aware that these are potential areas of kidnap. And so we have to design an early warning system that will be connected to the police. For example, in each of the senatorial zones per state, and depending on the size of the state, you can have a kind of critical mass of a joint in nature that should something happen, the response should be robust. And then their armory, their arms should be a little bit upgraded. Even their police, they should not be allowed to carry the GPMG that will help because they are closer to the community. So, for example, in Kaduna, there's nothing wrong in having like 7 or 8 really robust response teams in some of these areas. So you calculate the distance that if something happens within Kajuru, Kajuma, whatever, all those areas, we should be able to have within 10 minutes, within 30 minutes, or as the case may be, depending on the topography.
Right.
So
and speaking about that,
I think that is one thing that I think we should do.
You know, right there in that report,
a kind of kidnap aware.
We heard the respondents there saying that they carried out the operations. There was no security presence whatsoever. Yet, Kajuru Divisional Police Station is less than 1 kilometer away from that place, and they didn't show up. How do we then explain that?
The Kajuru Police Division, I think they must have given a response. It could be feeble. To say that the police will just run and hide when an attack is going on, I think that is not the practice. But the point I'm trying to make is that we must have a more robust, better ballistic protection for them, better vehicles for them, so that when such attacks are ongoing, they will be able to respond more confidently and more impactful in their response.
I understand that
the point I'm making, and I hope.
I understand we don't need to wash our dirty linen in public when you talk about that response. You know, I get the point, but at this point, several suggestions are being proffered all around the country. One of which is they think that we should look into the organization of the policing architecture in this country. What do you think about whether or not there should be either reorganization in terms of state policing, local government policing, just restructure policing? Will that fly for you?
Let me tell you one thing. State police, local government police, university police, or policing is policing. But let me tell you one thing. The police that we have today, how equipped are they? In a police division of 200 personnel, you have, if the division is lucky, they have 3 serviceable vehicles. Whereas the standard is 2 officers to 1 vehicle. But here you have 200 officers struggling with 3 rickety vehicles, not fueled, properly fueled. Every quarter allocation, maybe for the division, if they are lucky, every 3 months, 30,000 for maintenance, for fueling. How? So all those advocating for state police and all that, the police that you have, how equipped are they? When
the common sense that I mean, if the state
how can she give birth to a healthy baby? So if the Nigeria police that you have today is not equipped,
isn't it because
police, who is going to train? Which colleges are you going to use to
isn't
train
it largely?
Officers?
Isn't that largely because the federal government is responsible for funding the police, and occasionally the states, time and again try to assist. But they are saying, if that is reorganized and we have that responsibility, of course we will fund them.
Policing is beyond funding. Funding is critical, but there is a culture. There is a training that you need to give. Now, the people the state police are going to form, well, I am not an advocate today for state police because of my own experience as an officer who has served in various police commands, either as commissioner of police or others. And I also read the Gobi report of 1968, those factors that led the provincial and the native authority police and others collapsing them to form the Nigeria police. Those factors are even more glaring today than they were when they were scrapped. For all I know, even if you are going to have a state police,
just 1 second. Can you share some of those reasons? Just one moment, Mr.
You can start any other
Just one moment. You shared that you have some experiences and you have information about why the regional police systems were collapsed all into one. Can you share some of those things that you say are even more glaring now, and see if there is something that can be addressed?
There are so many. Have you heard that in some places, some politicians cannot even visit their home? And when they visit, things happen. You could have the people who come around your house and begin to fire and all that. Have you had any local government election they conducted that any other party won apart from the party in that state, where you have the State Independent Electoral Commission? Have you seen any state, all the elections they have been conducting? I'm sorry, I never want to go into the realm of politics. I'm not a registered member of any political party. I hate to talk about, I like talking about law enforcement.
But we're actually talking
police and all these things. Just a moment, let me make a point. Your correspondent was in Police College Ikeja one time, and that report they did was very helpful. I think Police College Ikeja is wearing a new look. What you saw there, do you like it? Please, if we are going, we can criticize the Nigeria Police Force, but let's criticize them in context. For me, and I believe, the Nigeria police officer is the most competent, the most diligent, the most capable officer. But the environment here...
Just 1 second. No, there are issues that have been raised here, and it's all with one intention. Just 1 second, so that this can be a little more productive, because we have much less time than we had before. A good number of state governments fund their police systems. The case of Lagos, I think in a number of other states, they have state security funds just for the purpose of funding their police systems. A good number of police, state governments all across the nation have also done the same thing. Now, you talked about the infrastructure of the Ikeja Police College and all of that. That is in one state, and it belongs to the federal government. The state government can do little or nothing unless there is an intervention that is requested of them. So if every state, at least if states that can afford would have that kind of control system, administering their own police system and dispensing them at will, what are the suggestions that you think need to be made in order for the police system to be a lot more effective than it is? Because, as you noted, the response time is extremely slow, especially in the areas where this, insecurity, kidnapping, and all of that is going on.
First of all, there has to be targeted funding. You talk of Lagos. Aren't you impressed with the policing in Lagos? When kidnapping was so rife in Rivers State, there was an administration then, and I don't know if now, that stopped kidnapping. They brought in equipment, and kidnappers kidnapping was brought to a standstill. It happened in Rivers. There was a time in the FCT, we were having, prior to 2007, there were numerous incidents of snatching of cars and attack on banks. Then, about 10-15 cars were snatched daily. An administration came in 2007, purchased vehicles for the police, more than 90 at a go, provided little allowances, ration cash allowance for the personnel. That number dropped from 15 to almost 0. They were only removing cars from where parked. Have you heard of a bank attack in FCT since then? There were so many attacks. Now, if you are bringing money, there has to be budget-oriented, it should be result-oriented. If I am a governor of a state, and I'm going to give you the commissioner of police, I said, we're having incidents of kidnapping and banditry. What support do you need? Oh, sir, I need vehicle, I need money, I need this. And I provide. And I say, okay, I sit with my security advisor, and I look at you, I say, okay, now, in the last quarter, we had 10 incidents of kidnapping and 5 of banditry. And you say, if I give you this, you are going to reduce it. I say, yes, sir. And you give me. Then, after 3 months, I call you. My security advisor is sitting by my side, and I am there, and I ask you, officer, we had now 12, not even 10. We have now 6. What is it you are not doing right? You are now following it because you have put your money. You don't just put the money to create anything. You put the money to give you a result. So, in addition to providing that, the excellencies and the security advisors must engage the commissioner of police, the director of DSS, and any other. And you begin to see impact. The local government security committee must convene every month. The state security committee must meet. Because if sometimes they don't meet until something happens and people begin to begin to meet and say that a kind of a crisis meeting. So the point I'm trying to say is, first of all, to stop what is happening in the Northwest on banditry and kidnapping, there has to be a holistic approach. And right from this moment, gather enough intelligence and attack the place once and for all. The attack will not last more than 1 week. 2 weeks, everything is gone. But you've got to get your facts right.
Well, we don't know that Kaduna is one of the few states that has a commissioner for internal security. I think Mr. Samuel Arowa is the commissioner for internal security, and hopefully we should be able to maybe get his voice heard on this particular matter if they have any extra information that the public should be aware of. Yes. But we also know that prior to this time, sometime shortly after 2015, maybe before 2019, the governor of Kaduna State did talk about an attack, a joint security operation in the Beningwari forest, done in conjunction with other states. And I think only recently he made reference to it again, saying that it's such a shame that, other governors seem to have pulled out of that arrangement. And maybe that's why we're saying what it is that we're saying. But looking at what is currently happening in the Northwest region, because it's this Northwest right now, but it would seem that Kaduna has been particularly under fire, from the bandits. And this is in spite of the fact that the governor says that, he's not going to pay ransom. He's not going to engage with bandits on that particular count. And one would think that that would be a non-incentive for bandits to keep coming to the state. I mean, by that I meant that since there is no money coming from the state coffers, perhaps they would take that as an incentive and go elsewhere. But that hasn't worked. So now that this attack has happened, on Kajuri in particular, what do you have already said a lot of things that need to be done, but there are immediate steps that we'll be looking forward to seeing on the part of government and security agencies. What would you be looking to see in the aftermath of this attack, in the immediate aftermath of this attack, that you're yet to see, even as a retired police officer? No,
I have said that, well, maybe I've not read the papers today, but communication has not been as effective as I would imagine, to know what they are doing about what has happened, That is one thing. But I think for immediately, the governor of Kaduna, Niger, Katsina, Zamfara, and Kebbi, they need to meet. When they meet, come up with what, because you see, there are people who are even more confident talking to them. They can tell you what is going on. And now, the Inspector General of Police and the Chief of Army Staff and others, heads of, especially the DGDSS, they will meet. Let me tell you, if they meet, it's not about releasing money. We are giving money for this, we are giving money for that. If they meet, you will, and then say, look, this is the situation that we have. What can we do? You will observe that the officers will... let me take you back. In the FCT, we had the G6.
No. We'll observe
okay,
what?
Sorry.
We're out of time.
All right, just a moment. Okay, let me finish. So what they need to do now is, first of all, get the facts, gather information, enforce synergy. Let there be no vainglory. Oh, it is army that achieved it. It is police that achieved it. Kill that. Let the press officers, the public information officers of the police, of the military, the DSS, let them have a joint center, like a joint ops room. They stay there, get the facts from the field, and release it to the public on as may be necessary. But the operation, so that they can draw personnel from other command, the police special forces, the military special forces, but this work is 90% intelligence. It's not about carrying AK-47 or GPMG or APC. The resources should go to intelligence gathering. They should look at those weaknesses. How is it possible to attack Kajuru surrounded by mountains and hills? How? Once you get these facts and you intercept them, by the time you inflict heavy casualty on them, they will come begging for amnesty.
No, let us hope that those who should watch are listening to you this morning, and that, you know, maybe they're already carrying out some of the things that you're already talking about, because at the end of the day, what we want is a safe return of those who have been kidnapped, and for people to be able to sleep with their eyes closed and travel as they please within their country. We have to thank you very much for coming on Sunrise Early this morning. Mr. Wilson Inalego is a former AIG of police and is speaking with us here in our Abuja studios. Thank you so much for coming on the program.